All right, everyone, let's begin a new Bluej project. Bluej is free to download and easily install on the web, and there's a quick learning curve, but you should be able to master Bluej and be able to use it easily as a beginner. Okay, let's start a new class in Java by clicking on this button that says create a new class in this package. Now we have to give our class a class name. Now, I'm going to be going through several questions concerning Java that will help you study for your Java exam, perhaps your Oracle certification, or just your university class, or perhaps your programming interview for a job. And for this example, or for this tutorial series, let's start with a class for a calculator. A nice example, let's call it calculator. Notice the class name should begin with a capital letter, and the other letters in the name of the class should be lowercase. This is per Java convention. So the Java language convention. Class language, Java, not Stride. Class type, it's going to be a basic class, not any of these other types. You hit the blue OK button, and as you can see, a little square will pop up in Bluej, and it will be called the class name we put in, which is calculator. And there will be some dashed lines here which show that we haven't hit compile. So if you hit compile, the dashed lines will disappear. So when you see dashed lines on one of the classes, it means that that class has not been compiled. So often you'll be editing a project or editing a class, and then you'll forget to hit the compile before you test. And so your test will have been pointless because it was before you compiled. So don't forget to compile. Now, to open the calculator class, we double click, and bam, it opens up a new window right above the Bluej project. And let me expand this. And as you can see, I have a huge text that you can easily read because I love accessibility. Okay. This is a basic Java class. And as you can see, Bluej will give you some default code here. And this code is all valid, and it is just a template. For our purposes, we're gonna delete it and just start from scratch because all this code is just a template and we can write our own. Okay, let's begin by writing our first class for these questions that I'm going to go through today. Let's start with our class. Now remember, the class is called calculator. To declare or to create a class, mind you, you use the following code. First, you type in the keyword public, meaning that this class can be accessed throughout the project. Public. Then you type the keyword class to show that you're creating a class. Public class, and following that, you will type the name of the class, calculator. As you can see, public class calculator. Then you will open a curly bracket and close the curly bracket. As you can see, if you don't close the curly bracket, you get this nice red error box beside Bluej. That's a helpful part of Bluej, is it will show you some error messages. You see here it says reached end of file while parsing. That means that Bluej, when it looks at your code as you're typing it here in a class, even though we haven't even compiled or saved it, it's still looking at it. It will pop up this error and saying it reached the end of the file as it looked through the file. It reached the end of the file, which means it expects you to include an end of file curly bracket. That's why we close our curly bracket. And I highly recommend closing the curly bracket as soon as you open the curly bracket for any curly bracket. And you will see a lot of curly brackets. All right, let's add a space there. Now I like to add a comment at the end of the class to tell me that where the class ends, because I'm a comment lover. I come from a novelist background, which means I love to write. And some people joke I write so many comments because I just love to write. Okay. Anyway, this is how you how you create a comment. Now, a comment is something in Java which won't be compiled, which means you can write anything in a comment and you don't have to worry about that comment affecting the rest of your code. Now, to create a simple comment on one line, you simply do 2 forward slashes. As you can see, the comment will even be in gray so that you can differentiate it in Bluej. Again, Bluej is great for beginners who are learning. All right, so we have 2 double slashes, and I'm going to say end of class calculator. All right. Now, next thing we want to add for this class is some documentation. Especially if you are working for a company as a Java software developer, you always want to be meticulous about your documentation because you will not be the only person reading your code. And even you, a week in the future, will want to remember what the heck you wrote back when you wrote a class. So to create documentation, we've made documentation for different parts of the code, such as a class, also a method. We would definitely write documentation for a method as well. So to make documentation, it's similar to making a comment. You do a forward slash and then an asterisk, and then you hit space. And Bluej, oh, actually you have to do 2. This is actually another type of comment. If you want to do a multi-line comment, this is how you do a multi-line comment. But if you want to make it into documentation, you must add a second asterisk right here, but not there, it's not necessary. Okay, and we're gonna write the calculator class for test your Java knowledge. And we're gonna write at author Alexandra, and we're gonna put at version 1.0. Okay. In the version, you can also put the date or the version number. It's up to you. Okay, now we have a basic class set up. And I'm going to give you your first quiz question. And that is going to be... Okay, that is going to be... I'm going to write the quiz question down right here in the form of a comment. Quiz question number 1 will be, which of the following is a class name that follows all the class naming conventions in Java? And I'm going to give you 4 different options as per a typical multiple choice test. And let's do this in a multi-line comment just to make it much easier on us. Because in Bluej, when you have a multi-line comment, you can hit enter many times and it will give you instant asterisks for your comment. Again, Bluej, big fan, at least for a beginner. Okay, so option A, remember the question, which of the following is a class name that follows all the class naming conventions in Java? A, public class calculator. B, let me hide my huge mouse. B, public class calculator example. C, public class calculator. And D, public class calculator. Okay, I'm going to give you a minute, cue the Jeopardy music, for you to determine which of the following is a class name that follows all the class naming conventions in Java. Emphasis on class naming conventions because there are different naming conventions for classes, methods, variables, constants, iterators, etc. Okay. Let's go through each of these and determine the correct answer. A, public class calculator. This is an incorrect answer because it has a lowercase letter at the beginning. So not this one. B, public class calculator example. Again, a beginning letter is lowercase, although the second letter of the first word is uppercase. It means it's getting closer, but still not quite. Next, public class calculator. Ding, ding, ding. Capital C, that means this is the correct answer. Public class calculator, all the letters here are capitalized, which should be a dead giveaway that this is not the correct answer. Okay, well, amazing job, everybody. You just finished question 1 of Test Your Java Knowledge. Let's move right along to question 2. Okay, let's talk about why we need to create a class in Java anyway. What even is the point? I mean, if you're a completely noob, or if you're a complete newbie to Java, then you might just hear the word class and think, a classroom? What is this? It might just be a completely vague concept to you. So let's discuss why you need a class. Well, you need a class to create instances. That means that an instance of a class, let's write this down. You need a class to create instances of the class. Now, what is an instance? An instance is created every time you use the class, which means we can create multiple instances of the same class. It means that we can reuse all the code that we write for calculator, like if we write some functionality for addition, some functionality to create multiplication, some functionality to create subtraction. We can use that functionality that we develop throughout our whole project. And this allows a class to be reusable. Okay. Let's move on to our second question concerning that very topic, classes and instances. Okay. Question 2. I think I'm going to leave it as not a comment just because it'll be easier for you all to read because it'll be black instead of gray. And we're getting this red bar again on the side of Bluej because this is not actually code. This is just me typing a sentence. So anytime you want to include a sentence that is in the English language rather than the Java language, you'll want to put these comments. But for the sake of our quiz, I'll leave it as though it were code now. And again, you can see a little red underline here. Java or Bluej is helping us out here by telling us, what are you doing? This is not proper code. So Bluej tries to help you quite well. Identifier expected. Now this error message means that it's trying to recognize what question is, but it doesn't know what it could possibly be. It's looking for an identification on what is question. But we can ignore that for now and move on to question 2. Okay. This is going to be a true or false question. Everyone loves these because, it's a little bit easier than having 4 options. Okay. Again, all these errors, but you see identifier expected, semicolon expected. That's because each line in Java should end in a semicolon. Except curly brackets, they don't require the end to be a semicolon after, because the curly bracket itself is an indication that the line ends. But otherwise, Java will ask you, or Bluej will ask you to end each line in a semicolon, because Java requires it to let it know that it's the end of a line. It's in the same way that a period works for reading a novel. Helps people in the English language to understand when a line ends. Well, Java needs to understand when a line ends too. Okay, true or false question. Let's do it. A single calculator class can be used to create as many instances of calculator as needed. All right. And as you can see, Bluej here will color code keywords in Java. So class is a keyword in Java, which means you should not use it to name anything other than using it to create a class. You shouldn't name your variables class. Class is a special word in Java, and that's why Bluej is even highlighting it for us in red to really help us beginners learn. Okay, this is your question. Cue the music. A single calculator class can be used to create as many instances of calculator as needed, other than a married calculator class. Just kidding, I meant single. Okay, the correct answer is true. That's right, there is no limit on how many times you want to create an instance of a class. There is no limit on how many times you want to make an instance of a class. That means every time you want to call up the class to use it, you can do it as many times as you want. So for example, if we want to create one instance of the calculator class to do addition for one student, we can do it. And then if we have another student, we can create another instance of the calculator class for them to use. So we can have as many as we want, unlimited students. Just like recording an online class, you can have unlimited students. Whereas in a classroom, you would have like maximum 30, depending on the class sizes. Okay, now that we've successfully completed question 2 of Test Your Java Knowledge, let's comment this out. Now, there's actually a very helpful keyboard shortcut in Bluej to comment out text lines in Bluej. I believe it is Control F8. Oh, it's not Control F8. I'm gonna have to, look at this. If you go to the Bluej header, I know it's hidden in my recording, but if you go to the Bluej header and click on the Edit tab, then you will get these nice handy tools called Undo, Cut, Copy, Paste. Gee, I wonder what those are. Just kidding, these are quite commonly used everywhere. Indent more. You can use FN plus F6, those keys on your Mac. I'm using a Mac. And if you're on Windows, you will see what keys you need to use right beside it. Indent more, that means that your code, here you see some indent. You can go FN F6 to indent it more, or FN F5 to indent it less. Indentation is useful to follow, especially again if you're working for a company, working with a team, you want to keep your code clean. You want proper indentation. You don't want too much indentation or too little indentation. You typically want one tab for each new nested field. Okay, there it is, FN F8. Oh, I was correct. Interesting. So if you click FN F8, you can comment out a long paragraph of text simply with some keys. Okay, let me try this again. FN F8. It's because I'm using a second keyboard. Okay, FN F8. Yes! How beautiful was that? All in one. You know, a lot of coders are all about efficiency. And there you go, that's efficiency for you. Okay, now, again, all these examples are still being shown in the calculator class. But this isn't real code, this is just questions. We'll get to some real code later. Well, this is real code. You could use this to create a class. If it's C, of course. All right, let's move on to our third example. In this example, we're going to be talking about instance variables. Let's write this down. Question 3. This one's going to be about instance variables. Now, a variable is a container that we use to store data. Containers to store data. And different variables hold different types of data. So you can have integer variables and string variables and character variables as some basic examples. there are more types of variables as well. But for now, all we're going to talk about for question 3 is not the types of variables, but how to create a variable. So, question 3. Which of the following variable names follows all the good naming convention rules of an instance variable name? Which of the following variable names follows all the naming convention rules of an instance variable name? So, let me give you the 4 options, similar to question 1. A. Let's see. What kind of variable would we need for a calculator? Let's think of a good one to use for this example. How about a button? Sounds good to me. Okay. Button for addition. B. Button for addition. C. Button for addition. D. Button for addition. Okay. I'm going to give you some time now to answer this question. You can click pause if you need to. And determine which of the following variable names follows all the naming convention rules of an instance variable name. Now, it's good to note that this naming convention rules we're talking about is about Java. Each programming language has its own convention rules for creating a class, which we saw earlier, for creating variables that we're looking at now, for ending a line, which we looked at earlier as well. All right. The correct answer for this one is A. A is the correct variable declaration, in other words, creation, in terms of naming. If we wanted a variable name, this would be the convention on how to do it. That is because the first letter is lowercase, and in fact, the first entire word is lowercase, and all subsequent following words from the second word onward, endlessly, must have a first letter uppercase and the remaining letters lowercase. Why? Well, because Java says so. And if you want to work for a Java company and not get fired, then you'll want to follow conventions to make code easy to read for everyone. Let's go through each of the other 3 options to talk about why they are incorrect. Well, button for addition here, all of the letters are lowercase, which is incorrect. And C, button for addition. While the second word and all words onward are in sentence case, i.e. beginning with a capital letter and the rest of the letters lowercase, the first letter is a capital letter. This would be correct for a class name. Correct for a class name. But because we're talking about variable names, this is correct for a variable name. So that's the difference between declaring a class and declaring a variable. A class will have a capital first letter, and a variable will have a lowercase first letter. This would also be correct for a constructor name. We haven't talked about those yet, but this would also be the correct declaration of a constructor. Okay, and D, all the letters are capitalized here, which is incorrect. Again, I didn't make these rules. The creators of Java from the company Oracle did. Okay, well, amazing job, everybody. You've successfully gone through your first 3 testing your Java knowledge questions. Let me know if you have any questions for me. Put me in the student seat, and I will see you in the next tutorial.